Rich people of Reddit, what does it feel like? What's the best and worst thing about being wealthy? I'm affluent, but not rich. My friend is rich, so I get to see a front row seat. The best thing is he can do anything he wants, whenever he wants. But interestingly, he's put limits on himself. Settled down, purchases a normal sized, but very nice, house, and had kids. So he is tied down a lot more. The worst thing is that all motivation to do things must come internally. Nobody is telling him to do anything, so if he wants to accomplish something he has to provide the self-discipline. Also, he is very generous, but has a weird attitude towards money. I've seen so-called friends assume he'll just pay for something because he can afford it. He doesn't, and that cools the friendship pretty quickly. I think the reason we are so close is I've never asked him for anything financially. Yes, he'll pick up the dinner tab more often than me, but I take my turn, probably every third time, but I never expect it, and I treat him like a person, not a bank. Okay, I grew up with successful professional parents in a very rich area. I'm not rich myself by any means, but due to geographical luck I knew a lot of really rich people growing up. I knew people whose parents ranged in wealth from $350k a year to, if I told you their name you'd know how they got rich. There is no discernible difference in habits between the two. I knew someone whose family name gets thrown around when talking about really rich people, and the dude was really almost embarrassed about his wealth. I was actually good friends with him, and he'd always say that he has to worry if people like him or if they like his money. He goes out of his way to keep his financial status private. He and his family still spent a lot of money, but they just kept it really low key because they've been wealthy long enough to have to deal with the negative attention that it brings, including threats to their personal safety. Funny story. One of his parents would remark that butthole people with professional jobs have just enough money to be in butthole about it. There is also an interesting story when we studied abroad together and had to show our parents' tax returns to get the student visa. I'm pretty sure he got around that somehow. I also knew people who were incredibly wealthy and they spent a lot. Their parents or grandparents or great-grandparents owned large advertising firms or invented some random medical device that made them a crapload of money, and they conspicuously spent a lot of it, and I'm sure they were still living within their means. When it comes down to it, people handle their money differently. This thread just seems so lopsided towards the really rich people just don't spend money and are super classy about it. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it's not. Have a very good friend from way back when whose entire family has never worked, going back to before the Great Depression. We have talked at great length over the years about it. He says the best part is all your decision making is made without money being a consideration. It's a weird concept for us common folk, but a $300 5-course steak meal in NYC and his favorite $7 Chinese restaurant hold the same value for him. When we first started driving and splitting tabs in high school, he had a difficult time grasping why 4 people shouldn't split a check evenly when his part was half of it. He wasn't trying to be a jerk. It was just completely foreign to him and had to be learned way too late in life. He says the worst part is what I discussed above, a disconnected feeling with the majority of all of us. Every summer his family would go on extravagant trips all over the world, while the rest of us would hang out and play pool or video games. When he got back he felt like he was the one missing out, even though he spent the summer on a yacht visiting different South Pacific islands. He is a good guy though, and now that we are older he has found a great happy medium, working a job for fun while always being generous enough to pick up most tabs. This isn't the target answer, but it may be a little more relatable. I grew up very poor, renting out rooms in crack houses poor. When I was 18 I joined the military for an opportunity to get out, which upon completion allowed me to go to college for free. With a combination of both luck and hard work I was able to make well into the 6-figure range within my first few years of working, with almost no debt. While my salaries will never compare to the 1%, I feel rich. If I want something, I can purchase it. If I want to help out friends and family, I can. I get to have nice things and take elaborate trips. It's also easier to do things such as start businesses. I have 2 small side businesses which are run by my family and friends. Neither are making me huge money, but they support themselves and employ a few people that are close to me. Overall I think I truly appreciate what I've got because I grew up with so little. Regardless of what people say, life is much easier with money. You and I have very similar lives. The best part of coming from nothing is empathy. You have the ability to truly give from a want to help. The number one benefit of having money is not having to worry about money. Number 2 is being able to be generous towards friends, family and loved ones. Anybody who wasn't born into it daydreams about all the toys they'd buy when they have lots of money, and if you come into it fairly rapidly, incredible job straight out of university, get in on a successful startup, etc. For the first while, you'll collect those things, and it's cool, but after a while, you have all that stuff, and at best, you'd be upgrading things you already own, so the thrill of new things fades. And the final thing you'll say to yourself once you've finally made it is, hey, money really doesn't buy happiness. Dang it. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it's a heck of a lot easier to be happy when you have it. A TV show that aired recently here in the UK, John Richardson Grows Up, covered the subject of money recently, both those who have it, such as the kids of a British billionaire, and those who choose to live off-grid. The son of the billionaire wasn't coping well with it at all, as he felt he'd not earned the wealth he'd inherited, and spent his days in his room surfing Facebook. However, a lottery winner, who'd not exactly earned it either, summed it up quite well by saying money doesn't bring you happiness, but it's easier to be unhappy and rich than it is to be unhappy and poor. If you've not seen the show, then it's worth watching. My mother used to have a millionaire boyfriend. We moved into his house. Life was pretty great. Lots of vacations, free stuff, but life always finds a middle way. For normal people, on your emotional level, you can't have happiness without pain. Having a lot of money is normal. You find other things to be sad about. They broke up. I still feel the same without all the money, gifts and stuff. The feeling of wanting something, money, is stronger than actually having something, I believe. The feeling of wanting something, money, is stronger than actually having something, I believe. This is a great insight. Just as a side note, a life lesson. The people who you would consider a snob are generally those without that much. I worked in a golf club over summer. Why I don't work there anymore is a story for another day. Several very rich multi-millionaires would come in. Glass of Coke for the kids, pint of Stella for them, maybe a sandwich. The somewhat rich spend everything. Incredibly expensive bottles of wine, the most expensive things on the menu, constantly having their member cards declined for having zero balance. Wanted everybody, including the staff, to know how much money they were spending and demand the greatest treatment. If somebody wants to be seen as rich, they probably aren't all that much. If somebody is rich, they won't say a dang thing. I had the exact same experience as you. My summer job for a couple years was on the grounds crew for a pretty high-end golf and country club. The extremely wealthy had no issue taking a couple-minute break from their game to chat about their day or the weather or whatever, but the ones who weren't as rich treated us like we were their personal employees. My husband's grandfather passed last year, and in February of this year, we found out that he was left an exceptionally large inheritance. We knew his grandfather was wealthy, worked on the Manhattan Project and invested in Exxon, etc., but figured his money would go to my husband's mother, his only child, or charity. A bit of background before I answer the questions asked. My husband and I are in our late 20s. I grew up in a blue-collar, lower middle-class background. My husband's parents made their own money and didn't rely on the family for their income. My husband and I paid for my school out of our pocket, and while we had to take out student loans for his grad school, we paid off the loans before they accrued interest. Before 6 months post-graduation, when we learned about the inheritance, we were in the middle of saving up to buy a house and had no debt to our names. We clip coupons and buy things on sale. When we met with our financial advisor last week, he gave us a checkbook with enough money in the account to buy our first home outright. It feels very strange to know that I don't have to worry about money. I still feel embarrassed when I buy treats for myself. I have bought one pumpkin spice latte this year. Yes, white girl in my 20s here. No yoga pants at the moment, though. The worst thing is worrying the people will find out. My family doesn't know. They just know that I have a very good paying job and that my husband and I are fantastic at budgeting. Everyone expects a payout when they know you have something. A teacher I had in high school who taught me physics sold his consultancy company to a larger corporation for several $billion. Yes, you read that, read billion with a B. He and his partner split it 50-50. After relaxing for a couple of years, he decided to go into teaching. Guy was the most laid-back teacher I ever had. Almost every Friday he would bring in donuts, and since he had an engineering background, he wanted to get a lot of students interested in engineering, so he organized these engineering dinners. Man, those meals were the crap. We would all be enjoying a delicious meal while sitting around with a successful, usually highly at that, engineer who would tell us about his career. I gotta say, looking back on it, that is what really got me into engineering. Most importantly, the guy never flaunted his wealth. Sure, he drove a nice car, but he never acted like he was above you. He was also probably the most influential teacher I had in my 4 years at that school. My French butler doesn't type comments fast enough. You should name him Victoria so it's like you're doing a perpetual AMA. I'm not sure if this really counts as rich when there are true multimillionaires posting here, but my dad is the top 0.5% of earners in the US. He's an immigrant who came to the US with about $200 of pocket money. He begged his uncle to buy his plane ticket over here as a gift, and he had a full ride for his graduate school. He was originally planning to get a PhD, but after he got a job offer after his first summer internship, he hustled and finished an MBA and has been working like crazy since. You honestly would never know looking at him, though. He wears court classics from Costco and still wears his favorite shirts from the late 80s. He took good care of them. We have a minivan and 2 sedans. He bought his first house, 4 bedroom, 3 bath, in 1990, paid it off a few years later and has lived there ever since. What does he spend his money on? He worked really hard so my mom wouldn't have to worry about having a job and could stay home with my siblings and me as we were growing up. My siblings and I have been unbelievably lucky. He has fully funded our full college education and graduate school tuitions, no questions asked, and refuses to take any payment back, despite our urging. He takes our whole family on really neat, unique vacations. He doesn't just go away with my mom and leave us like a lot of parents tend to do. Growing up, we never had allowances. We did chores because we had to and we didn't want to know the consequences. We were encouraged to volunteer in high school rather than get part-time jobs. If we ever needed money for something or wanted something, we had to present valid reasons why and back up all our purchases. I think the thing that makes me admire my dad the most is that he is very generous with his money, and silently so. He donates to a lot for great causes, but doesn't make a big flash about it. If his friends or family are ever in a bind, he is the first to help them out. Whenever I see people he knows, from work to friends to family, they always mention how much he helped them financially and emotionally when they needed it most. I think my dad understands that money isn't anything unless you use it to help others. When I got my first job, he gave me 3 pieces of advice that every college graduate should take heed of. 1. Get a Roth IRA in 401k while you can and max out your contribution to the best of your ability. Especially take advantage of any employee matching. 2. The only thing worth going into debt for is buying a house. No credit card debt. Buy your cars with cash, etc. 3. Try, for as long as you can, to keep your budget similar to when you were earning the least. Annual compensation raises, salary bumps should go to supplement retirement or savings. Resist the temptation to spend a whole lot more money once you get a raise. I had a long run of $300k plus per year, and now far less, so I have perspective from both sides. The upside is of course having nice things, fun trips, handling big expenses like kids' college, all without falling into debt. The downside is that I created a lifestyle that was expensive to keep up, and there was always stress about money. My income was not consistent, more sporadic large amounts. I worried about money as much then as I do now. All that's changed is the amounts. Till not to let people know you are rich. Politics, religion, and money are subjects best avoided in polite conversation. Good thing we Bigfoots don't have to worry about red flags at our job since we just live in the woods. #feature me.